second graders. So in my last video, I introduced a reading strategy. Does anyone remember what it is? You're exactly right. Compare and contrast. Can you say it with me? Compare and contrast. And remember, I was telling you that when we compare and contrast two things, we are trying to figure out what their similarities are and what their differences are. Last time, I compared and contrasted an apple with an orange. When I compared the two fruits, I was trying to think of similarities, things that are the same about both apples and oranges. And I put the comparisons right in the middle of my Venn diagram. And when I contrast, I was trying to think of ways that they are different. What is true only about oranges and what is true only about apples? And I put those two things on the outsides. So I compare in the middle and I contrast on the outsides of my circles. So I thought it would be really fun if instead of comparing and contrasting fruits and vegetables, I thought it would be cool if we compare and contrasted two different stories. So in the next couple of videos, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be using the strategy of compare and contrast to find similarities and differences between two stories. Now, I think you're familiar with this story. Give me a thumbs up if you have ever heard the story of the Three Little Pigs. Yeah? Well, good. That means you're going to be really great at this. I'm going to read two different stories, one in this video and then one in the next video. And in the following video, we're going to use a Venn diagram to compare and contrast the two stories. So before we get started today, I want you to go and run and find the supplies you're going to need for this activity. What you're going to need is a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil or a marker, anything to write with. So pause the video and come back with those two supplies, paper and a pen. All right, did you get your supplies? Awesome. So when I'm reading the first story, what I want us to do is to just identify the story elements of the story. All right? Do you remember what story elements are? So story elements are when we try to identify the characters of the story, the setting of the story, the problem, and the solution. So we're going to use our piece of paper to write down our story elements. So what I want to do is make 4 rectangles. So first I want you to fold your paper the hamburger way, like this. And then I want you to fold it one more time so that it's like this. Now when you open up your paper, you should have 4 rectangles. And I'm going to use a highlighter just so that you can see what it should look like. Okay, now I'm going to write the different story elements we're going to try to find. So we're going to try to find the characters, the setting, the problem, and the solution. All right, so now go ahead. I'm going to put this on the screen, pause your video, and copy down my piece of paper. You want the characters, the setting, the problem, and the solution. When you're ready for me to move on, you can press play. All right, hopefully you have that written down, and we're going to go ahead and start reading our first version of the Three Little Pigs. This one is called The Three Little Pigs. It is retold and illustrated by James Marshall. So after I read, we're going to identify the story elements. So make sure you're listening closely. The Three Little Pigs. The Three Little Pigs. Once upon a time, an old sow sent her 3 little pigs out into the world to seek their fortune. "Now be sure to write," she said, "and remember that I love you." So the mama pig is saying goodbye to all of her 3 little pigs as they go out into the world. The first little pig met a man with a load of straw. "I know," said the little pig. "I'll buy your straw and build a house." "That's not a good idea," said the man. I wonder why he said that's not a good idea. "Mind your own business, thank you," said the little pig, and he bought the straw and set about building a house. It took him no time at all. Very soon, a lean and hungry wolf happened by. Pig was just about his favorite food in the world. So he knocked on the door and said, little pig, let me come in." To which the pig replied, "No, no, no, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." This annoyed the wolf to no end, and he said, "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." "Go right ahead," said the little pig. So the wolf huffed and he puffed and he blew the house in. And he gobbled up the little pig. Uh-oh. That doesn't seem too good. The second little pig met a man with a load of sticks. "I've got it," said the little pig. "I'll buy those sticks and build a house." "I'd think twice about that," said the man. "Oh, pooh," said the little pig. "What would you know?" And he bought the sticks and went to work building a house. "Very pretty," he said. Do you think the sticks are going to work better than the straw? Let's find out. No sooner had the little pig settled into his pretty house than the wolf happened by. He was still hungry and he said, little pig, let me come in." To which the little pig replied, "No, no, no, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." The wolf didn't care for that at all. And he said, "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." "Ha, ha, ha," said the little pig. So the wolf huffed and he puffed and he blew the house in. And he gobbled up the little pig. Now the third little pig met a man with a load of bricks. "These bricks will make a fine, sturdy house," said the man. "Capital idea, my good fellow," said the little pig. So he bought the bricks and set about building a house. It took him quite a bit of time, but it was well worth it. "Nice and solid," said the little pig. "Nice and solid." So even though it took a longer time, it's nice and sturdy, which means it's strong. But no sooner had the little pig moved in than he noticed the wolf loitering about. That means he's kind of hanging around. And the wolf, who was still hungry, said, little pig, let me come in." To which the little pig replied, "No, no, no, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. All right, let's see what the wolf decides to do. Well, the wolf had heard that before, and he said, "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." "Oh, don't do that," said the little pig. But the wolf huffed, and he puffed, and he huffed, and he puffed until he was quite blue in the face. The house stood firm. "I'll try another approach," muttered the wolf. So he couldn't blow it down. Let's see what he does. And he put on his most dazzling smile. "Little pig, I was only teasing," he said. "By the way, I hear tell that Farmer Jones has the most scrumptious turnips. Shall we go pick a few?" "Oh, I'm much too busy now," said the little pig. "What about tomorrow morning?" "Excellent," said the wolf. "I'll come for you at 6. So the wolf is acting in a very clever way. Do you think that the pig is going to fall for his trick? Let's find out. The next morning, the little pig got up at 5, hurried off to Farmer Jones's turnip field, picked a basket full of scrumptious turnips, and dashed back home. When the wolf arrived at 6, the turnips were already boiling in the pot. "Sorry, I couldn't wait," said the little pig. The wolf tried not to show his displeasure. "No harm done," he said. "By the way, there is a lovely apple tree down in Merry Meadow. Shall we go help ourselves to a few apples?" "I must cook my turnips," said the little pig. "Let's meet there tomorrow morning." "Splendid," said the wolf. "Shall we say at 5? So the wolf still is not giving up. The next morning, the little pig was up at 4 and went off for the apples. It took longer than he'd expected to reach Merry Meadow, and while busy gathering apples in the highest tree, he saw the wolf approaching. "Do try one of these," he called down, throwing an apple as far as he could. When the wolf chased after the apple, the little pig shimmied down the tree and made it safely home. Phew, that was close. The next day, the wolf came again. Really, he was quite put out. That means he was pretty frustrated. "There's a fair today on Hog Hill," he said. "Would you care to go?" "Why don't we meet there?" said the little pig. "Would 3 o'clock suit you?" "Colossal," said the wolf. 3 it is. Just to make sure, he would be there at 2. So the wolf is like, "You can't trick me anymore, pig." At 1 in the afternoon, the little pig went to the fair and had a fine time. So fine that he lost track of the hour. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he saw the wolf coming up the hill. Without a minute to spare, the little pig jumped inside an empty butter churn and rolled down the hill toward the wolf. So here's the butter churn. That's where they make butter. So the pig jumped in it and rolled down the hill towards the wolf. Well, the wolf was so scared that he ran all the way home. That evening, the wolf went to the little pig's house and told him how frightened he'd been by a great round thing that came down the hill. "Frightened you, did I?" said the little pig. That great round thing was a butter churn, and I was inside." This was simply too much for the wolf to stand. "I've been nice long enough," he cried. "I'm going to eat you up right now." And he climbed onto the roof. When the little pig saw this, he put a big iron pot in the fireplace and quickly stoked the fire. "Here I come," cried the wolf. "Dinner time." Uh-oh, at the bottom of this chimney is a what? Let's see. "You can say that again," said the little pig, and he cooked the mean old wolf and gobbled him up. The end. So, even though the wolf was extremely clever and was trying to trick the last little pig, this little pig ended up being even more clever than the wolf. So I like this version of the story. So let's revisit our piece of paper with the story elements. We have the characters, the setting, the problem, and the solution. So in a couple minutes, I'm going to ask you to pause this and try to fill it out on your own. So remember, the characters, that is who is in the story. Who or what is in the story. The setting is, where does the story take place? The problem is, what goes wrong in the story? Or what challenges our character? What goes wrong? And our solution is, how is the problem solved and how does the story end? So what I want you to do is pause the video and try to fill this out on your own. And then when you think you've tried your best, hit play again and we'll go through it together. So pause your video and try to fill out your sheet. All right, I'm hoping that you pressed play, which means you're ready to go over your answers. All right, let me get my marker. I'm going to use blue. So the characters, that's who is in the story. Who is this story mostly about? Well, it's mostly about the three little pigs and the what? The wolf, exactly. Those are the main characters. So I'm going to write 3 pigs and the wolf. Now the setting, where does this story take place? Well, it takes place in a lot of different places. It takes place at the different houses of the pigs. It takes place on Farmer Jones's turnip farm. It takes place in Merry Meadow, where they picked apples. And it takes place at the fair. So that's a lot of different places that the story takes place. I'm going to write the 3 houses. Then I'm going to write, so we said the farm, the meadow, and the fair. So the setting takes place at the 3 houses, the farm, the meadow, and the fair. Okay, let's talk about the problem in the story. What goes wrong? So the main problem is that the wolf is trying to trick the pigs so that the wolf can eat them. So that's kind of the biggest problem in the story. And the wolf eats the first 2 pigs, right? The wolf wants to trick and eat the pigs. So the problem in our story is the wolf wants to trick and eat the pigs. And the first 2 little pigs were not clever enough for the wolf because they chose straw and sticks to build their homes. And the wolf just huffed and puffed and blew their houses down. But there is a solution. How is the problem solved? Even though 2 of the little pigs were gobbled up, The third pig solves the problem. So one way that the third pig solves the problem is by building his home out of what material? Good, he built his home out of bricks. So the wolf cannot huff and puff it down. It's sturdy and strong. And the other way that the pig solves the problem is by outsmarting the wolf. So even though the wolf kept trying to trick him again, the third pig outsmarted the wolf. Remember, he went into the butter churner. He made the fire so that when the wolf came down the chimney, the pig gobbled up the wolf. So the third pig outsmarts the wolf. So the third pig makes his home out of what material? Out of bricks. Then I'm going to write outsmarts the wolf and gobbles him up. Okay. Sorry, this is a little messy. So the solution I wrote is that the third pig. Okay. The third pig makes his home out of bricks, outsmarts the wolf, and gobbles him up. So if you need to fill in your paper, you can pause this again and fill out your paper so that next time we're going to do this again, but with a different story. The next story is the true story of the Three Little Pigs. So tune in next time so that we can read the next version. Good job, everybody.